when I started the business over 35 years ago, it was predominantly manufacturing. And then we moved into the banking environments with TD and RBC, and then into some of the other banks. And then just over time, the way manufacturing changed in Ontario in particular, then it became more office related.
Okay. So when you're talking about like manufacturing, you're working with manufacturers to create ergonomic solutions, like ergonomically sound solutions.
That's correct. So an example would be on an assembly line for, at the time, it was called Chrysler, Stellantis. It would be making sure as the industrial engineers were setting up the lines that we were able to tell them how high the line should be, the furthest reach someone could do, what's the maximum to push wires together. So we would give them feedback and then they would go away and then change the design so that humans could actually perform the tasks.
Okay. So really it was like a thrust in helping assembly line workers
That's right.
and physical workers, really.
The physical, but then the psychological and mental side was with NAV Canada, for example, or a steel mill that's near here where there was a lot of human error occurring. And human error, when you're navigating planes in the sky, would obviously be a disastrous. And in the steel mill, the errors actually had resulted in loss of life. So that's when we were dealing more with the mental aspects in terms of fatigue, preventing error. You know, a red button means stop, a green button means go. And as simple as that sounds, sometimes button colors actually weren't intuitive. So it's all the way from the mental side to the physical as well.
Oh, interesting. So when you're talking about errors, like human errors and stuff like that,
yes,
what do you mean more?
The way most ergonomists think is that there's no such thing as human error. There's bad design.
Okay.
That's the premise from which we start. And you only arrive at the human as being the cause once you've disproven everything else. So is it the machinery? Is it the color of the button? Is it 12-hour shifts and people are fatigued and making mental errors? Quite often, whenever we read about any sort of accident, whether it's an air accident or the bus full of the hockey players that was hit by the truck, right away everyone zoomed in on the human being. And in fact, when you do a proper cause analysis, which is part of ergonomics, then it's not. It's always multifactorial, and the human is only one of many things that happen to go wrong on that particular day.
Right. It was interesting, actually. This is reminding me of that movie. Was it called Sully? It was about, Captain Sully when he landed the plane in the Hudson, the Miracle on the Hudson. And it was a really interesting review. And he said, well, you have to take into all of these other considerations.
That's right. And that's where things like AI and machine learning is becoming a little bit frightening, because who's telling the machine and AI to make certain decisions? It's a human at that end. So are we going to try to minimize errors? And Sully, think of the decisions he was making.
Right.
Okay, if I do this, then maybe half of the people on the plane will die. If I do this, so all those calculations, and that's where his deep experience is important and often forgotten with older employees who have that deep experience and they've been through those scenarios and they can figure it out really quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I think the turning point in the movies was when he said, looking at the simulator reaction, the people in the simulator saying, well, they're not even reacting to the bird attack kind of thing or whatever it was called. And the bird hit. And they said, we were kind of stunned for a few seconds. So you have to factor all that in.
That's right. And you want those few seconds to be narrowed down to an even faster decision because, again, there's so many decisions, altitude and, it's the plane on an angle, where's the Hudson River, all of those things together. Yes.
So working on a machine, it's, taking into all these factors. Where was this? Where was that? How fast could they turn the machine off and all that stuff?
but there's nothing better than also having the real life experience on top of that.
Yeah. Oh, how did you get into ergonomics?
Good question, because when I actually went into this field, it wasn't really well known in Canada, but I have 2 degrees that probably led me to that thinking. So I have a kinesiology, exercise physiology degree, and then a second degree in physiotherapy. When I was working at a hospital near here in Toronto, there were many people coming in from the cookie factory just up the road from the hospital. They all came in missing parts of their hands or fingers. I won't go into the graphic detail, but most of the injuries were not particularly serious, but the psychological damage that was caused, having lost a body part, meant that we were seeing them for about 6 months. They had long ago healed, but we needed to get them back and ready to go to work. So I started to do a review of the literature and came across this science called ergonomics, which is really big in Europe and Australia. It's been around longer than in North America. And I approached the senior management team and I said, look, we could prevent these accidents in the first place because we're seeing people for 6 months. Some don't even go back to work. So there's a big human cost and an actual ROI cost. That was too forward thinking for the way that hospitals in Canada think at that time. So I had a business plan already in place for this. So I then launched my own company and approached the cookie factory and other places where we had seen injuries occurring and talked about we could prevent this and we could get people to be more productive. So that was over 35 years ago that I did that.
Wow. Yeah, I remember kind of maybe 20 years ago, people talking about how to properly lift up, a box, a heavy box, and that was my first encounter with ergonomics, really.
Right. Yes. And the irony with that training is no one picks up the box the way that they're shown. So it's actually figuring out each person's body and what's the best way for them to pick up the box. Or the first question in ergonomics is, does that person need to pick up the box? So it's actually taking that question, should they be picking it up? That's always the first question in ergonomic design.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. We know you because you've helped us to qualify our furniture, analyze it in terms of ergonomic features.
Yes.
Ergonomic, I don't know how you say it, friendly features or...
Yes. Yeah, that's a good word. Well, what's interesting is that with my 35 years and working with industrial engineers, the industrial engineers came about, at first they saw us as, you're going to cause us to stop the lines, it's going to be costly, you won't help us. Once that was proven to them, then we became a team. Okay, you're thinking of designing this? We would sit right beside them and health and safety and then come up with the right design. What's frustrating is in the world of furniture, I can tell you there are few, if any, companies that ever come to either my company or other really experienced companies and say, look, we're designing A, B, and C. We want you sitting at the table with the designer. So your company is very rare in that regard in terms of you have your design engineer coming together, working together, designing standards and changing those standards over time as well. So that's a very rare thing that happens.
I guess you get brought in so you can, there's the assembly lines, there's helping, companies in their production facilities, there's, helping companies to design, kind of more ergonomically focused furniture. And you get brought into workplaces like just regular to help people either source things or
Yes.
Help with posture.
Right. So depending on the company, some are more forward thinking than others. Some, for example, BMO, and I'm not putting a plug into any one company, but BMO, RBC in the past would bring us in and say, look, we're thinking of totally redesigning the capital markets area. We want you to come in and study what people do. What are their mental demands? What are their physical demands? How often do they take breaks? What are their issues? What are the employees saying is an issue? And then we sit with the designers and would actually be able to look at their designs, make modifications, and then help them as a third party to decide what's the best furniture.